Subject, as you know, making marriage holy. I've taken a definition of holy, which I think we can work in with this subject. Holy, hallowed, or spiritually perfect. The marriage should be hallowed or spiritually perfect. If a marriage is to be spiritually perfect, it certainly doesn't mean that it is to be consummated with the idea of attaining wealth or position, or that it is entered into simply to propagate the race, or that the marriage is to be lived wholly on the physical plane. It surely does not mean that, a spiritually perfect marriage. But this is what I feel it means, and I think we all will understand it, that a spiritually perfect marriage, a holy marriage, is one in which both the husband and the wife together return to God. That's a spiritually perfect marriage. That's a holy marriage. Both go back to God. Now, on every hand we see, or we read about the legal statistics and about the testimony of ministers and social workers and those psychiatrists and those who feel that they can help others. They're called troubleshooters in the realm of human relations. We read and we hear about those things, that marriage fails. And we also read that many people, instead of happiness, are caught in the welter of misunderstandings and frustrations and dreams which do not come true. We know these things. They're right before us. And therefore we ask the question, what is it? What is the basic material that will guarantee understanding in marriage, guarantee harmony, guarantee mutual trust and service? What is that basic thing which is needed? What is the magic instrument that will make marriage holy? It is very simple. The answer is simple. It is simply, as I have said, spirituality. In spirituality there will be an understanding, patient understanding between people. There will be a tendency to work together if spirituality is in that marriage. If behind the marriage is the one idea, to return to God and to see God in the other person and realize that we would not have one another except God is in that person. That's what is meant by spirituality. But the greatest thing in spirituality is this, and this is the important thing, that in a true marriage, and we can say even in a true friendship, there is an indissoluble bond. No matter what the other one does, there's an indissoluble bond between them, and that bond is the unconditional divine love of God. That's what is necessary. That's the underlying magic need to make marriage successful, is that indissoluble bond be recognized and maintained. I remember one instance that happened back in Massachusetts a long time ago. I think the second year after I met the master, we went up the North Shore to a summer place there and stayed. And early in the morning, a little girl came running to the door and banged on the door and said in her little, she had just a little nightdress on, and she said, "Come quick, my father's killing my mother." And so I had to get up, and I went over to the constable. He was the lighthouse keeper, the constable, and everything on the island. So he came and he said, "You come with me." So I followed him. We went to this little shack, husband and wife, and he was standing over her like this, and she was on the floor and had a big gash on her head. Well, the constable talked to him, and he asked me to talk to him, and finally we got them straightened out, and they went back. And But the strange thing is this, that the next morning I looked out and I saw two people digging clams. And they were digging clams just as unconcerned, and they were talking nicely to one another, same man and wife, that the night before had been killing one another. So marriage is a strange thing, a very strange thing. But there must have been that indissoluble bond there to put up with that, don't you think? But that's the important thing in marriage, that indissoluble bond. No matter what happens, no matter how much trouble there is, misunderstanding, still that never breaks. And that's the same bond which is behind true friendship. That's the same bond that is behind the true devotee of God. No matter what comes, he never breaks that bond. He never breaks that indissoluble bond with God. As Master put it, he said, never let go of God, never leave God's side. Why? Because that indissoluble bond is the unconditional love of God. And so if that can be in marriage, if that can be there and recognized and preserved, that marriage will be holy in time. Now, Gandhi spoke so wonderfully of his wife. You heard Mr. Cook read how wonderfully the wife spoke of Gandhi. But Gandhi said the same thing, and I want to just quote his words from Hindu Dharma, written by Gandhi. He says this, speaking about his wife: "She moves me as no other woman in the world can." Now that's something. Gandhi was a powerful spiritual person. But why did she move him? Not that she has no faults. I dare say that she has many more than I see myself. But the feeling of an indissoluble bond is there. Wasn't that wonderful? Gandhi, a great saint. But what was greater than that was that indissoluble bond of God's unconditioned love in that marriage. That is what is needed to make marriage holy, and I carry it a little further. That is what is needed to make friendship real, and that is what is needed to make you and to make me a true disciple of God, is to recognize and preserve and never forget the indissoluble bond of God's unconditioned love. Now, a little bit about the metaphysics of marriage. First, if marriage is kept too much on the physical plane, there's only one answer. Things will get progressively worse. I think we all will agree with that, and in the end there'll be just zero, nothing. And perhaps worse than that is that there'll be ill health. And with two sick parties and two sick minds, there's going to be trouble and can't be anything else but trouble. And so, if the marriage is kept too much on the physical plane, in the end there'll be nothing. But the great metaphysical reason is that that marriage is consummated, carried out on the plane of the cosmic dream, and the cosmic dream passes away. The consciousness of this cosmic dream is not eternal, it is not lasting. And so, that marriage is bound to fail. The marriage kept too much on the physical plane. Now, on the other hand, if that marriage is directed to the spiritual plane, as I have tried to point out, then what happens? Both go to God. Both go upward to the unity of His presence, and in that unity of God's presence there is fulfillment, full consummation of the marriage as it should be. There'll be no loss, because in God there's fulfillment and completeness. Nothing can be lost. And so if the marriage is kept on the spiritual plane, the end result is as it should be, union in the unconditioned love of God. Most people perhaps think, well, we get along pretty well. We have our little ups and downs. Sean, who was the dean of the Christ Church Cathedral in Hartford, Connecticut. I knew him as a little boy, lost track of him, and finally I found him there. I found him by reading in Guideposts an article on divorces and so forth. And it was very interesting what he said. I'd like to just quote what he wrote there, part of it. He said, I have known of church people who became divorced. Yet in my quarter century in the ministry, I have known not of a single instance of those who have prayed and worshiped together habitually to have been separated. Now that's a wonderful statement pointing out that the necessity or the necessary thing to make a marriage holy is spirituality. Spirituality in which will be cultivated and brought to the foreground, made dynamic to our consciousness, the indissoluble bond of God's love. And so I was pleased to read that, to see that these things are true and are demonstrated. Now going on about realism in marriage. We must be realistic. Those of you who are married realize this one thing, that unless the marriage is kept on a high plane of which we have been speaking, each one is going to lose the other. Realize that, and this is a fact. You think so much of your wife thinks so much of the husband, you're going to lose each other unless you keep that marriage in God. Why? Because the ordinary marriage is on the plane of the cosmic dream. Doesn't the cosmic dream pass away? Won't you and won't I pass away? Certainly. But if you keep that marriage in the unity of God's consciousness, nothing is lost. Nothing will be lost. And so the wise married couples are those who take God with them, feel Him in the other, and attend to their church services, and especially, of course, self-realization. If you live the life of self-realization, God is constantly in your consciousness, and with Him in your consciousness, all things must be right. And so realize that. Be realistic with your marriage. No one wants to lose the mate. No one wants to lose their friends. It is not necessary. If you take that marriage and keep it in God, if you take that friendship and consummate it in the great love of God, nothing is lost. Everything is registered there. In the omniscient consciousness of God, everything is there. But if you keep that marriage and friendship in this cosmic dream consciousness, which we see all about us, it will pass away surely, because it does not last. God is the only thing that does not pass away. God's great love and His consciousness and His great light is eternal. Why not take the marriage to that? It's just as easy, if you make up your mind, to go up as it is to go down. It's just as easy to keep your marriage in God's great love as it is to let it be consummated in this changeable cosmic dream. Once you've created the habit of keeping your marriage on a high plane, it's easy. Once you've created the habit of keeping it on a lower plane, it's easy. But the man of wisdom is the one who keeps the marriage on the higher plane of God's consciousness and His love. One other point I have here is that of possession. Realize that if the marriage is kept on the plane of possession, one possessing the other, which you have seen that, I'm sure, then that marriage is relegated to the plane of material things or the astral plane. And so you're going to lose the other one. Or you're going to hunt, as the Master told me. He says you'll have to spend an awful long time finding her on the astral side. It can be done, he says, but it's an awful hard job. How much better? How much better to be united in that unity of God's presence. And so possession is dangerous in marriage because it cannot be consummated except on the physical plane and the astral plane. The physical plane we have discussed. If it's too much on the physical plane, it leads to trouble, unhappiness, ill health. If it's kept on the astral plane, unless you know the astral plane, very few know it, both will be lost in that realm. But if it's kept in the plane of God's great light and His love, nothing is lost, because God is the sole doer. He's in the husband, He's in the wife. It is He who has become the husband, it is He who has become the wife. Why not recognize that and not lose one another? One time up in, I'll think of it in a minute, little town I come through every week. That's cosmic dream consciousness for you. San Clemente. One time there, I was walking with the Master and 2 or 3 other devotees, been with him a long time. And we were in happy spirit, looking in the windows and trudging along, and I said, "Isn't this fine, sir? Here we are, enjoying, we have you, and I named the others. We have to leave it all." He said, "What are you talking about? We will know each other better and more completely on the other side than we do now." So that's what we have to look forward to. And those who are married, and take the mate to God, and dwell in His consciousness, there'll be no separation. Of course, I suppose it won't be just the same. I hope we don't have to pay bills there and things like that. But nevertheless, the consciousness of the presence of God is eternal. And you can have things there without so much labor and trouble. I'm sure of that. And so, realize it is so necessary not to limit our marriage or friendship. I like to bring both in because marriage, true marriage, holy marriage is true friendship. The greatest relationship with God is that of a friend and friend. And so marriage should be that way. 2 friends going back home to God together. And now the final requisite of happy or holy marriage is union. If there's union in God's great consciousness, as I have said, that marriage will not be relegated to the physical or astral plane, but will be consummated where? Even right here while you're living as man and wife, it can be consummated in the great presence of God, His great light and His love. Even while living here on earth, you can know each other in the light of God. Isn't that a most wonderful thing? If a husband and wife can be joined together, united in that consciousness of God which does not pass away, in which there is all fulfillment, no strife. There's plenty of strife in the marriages nowadays. But in that realm of God's great love, there is no strife. No real misunderstanding. It's nice to have the little spats. They make it interesting. But there's no real misunderstanding in the presence of God. And so that's the real consummation of marriage, or the consummation of real spiritual marriage, is that both are united in the great love of the one Father. Now we have the greatest example of a true marriage in one of our saints, Larry Marsha. I will not go into it very much because the time is short, but he lived in the world, but not of it. And so he showed by his exemplary life that it was possible, even, as it says in the little book I read, with wife and children around. But even in the state of marriage, it was possible to remain unattached, without that possession, without attachment to the physical plane, like the lotus in the pond. You know, that beautiful lotus comes up in a dark, murky pond, which we might liken to this worldly existence. And yet that beautiful flower, that beautiful lotus comes up from that murky, dark pond. So Larry DeMarcia pointed out it was possible, in spite of his household duties and his duties as a husband, and having of children and all that went with it, to be one of the greatest saints that ever existed. He a family man. And you read about Gandhi's wife. Larry DeMarcia's wife said the same thing. She looked upon him as her guru. Well, now you've got to be worthy of that, husbands. Don't think that the wife's going to look up to you unless you're worthy of it. But if you know God, and likewise the wife, if you know God, both will look up to one another. And Larry DeMarcia was able to show, living in this worldly existence, that he could be in it. He could be married. He could have children, and yet be above it. Be in the world, but not of it. And so he, living a family life, carried on his self-realization, unbeknown for many, many years to his wife. And he attained that high state. Then came the time when she didn't understand what he was, and spoke to him, reprimanded him for something about not providing for the children. And there was a great noise in the room, and she looked up, and Larry DeMarcia was up in the corner, suspended in the great light of God. Then she realized what she had for a husband, and she followed him. He gave her Kriya Yoga. And read the AY, and you can know how the story came out. And so we have the example of Larry DeMarcia. He lived an unostentatious, simple life. And yet, in that life, in that married life, he became one of the greatest saints. And so holy marriage, realize, is that marriage that ends, is consummated not on the physical plane alone, not on the mental plane, not on the astral plane, but it is consummated in the indissoluble bond of God's unconditioned love. Having that, even marriage, precarious marriage, will be a success, and both will go home to God.